every new character appearing in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Following 2 years of speculation as to what a T'Challa-less Wakanda would look like, we got our first glimpse of Black Panther Wakanda Forever following the San Diego Comic-Con. And to put it in one word, the world's greatest nation is troubled.
I never yielded! And as you can see, I am not dead!
Chadwick Boseman left behind an irreplaceable legacy as the Panther-themed icon of the MCU, so it was imperative that whatever they did following his death would have to not only tie into it, but elevate it if the movie were to succeed. And after watching the trailer, we can safely say that King T'Challa would have been proud of the warriors that have gathered in his wake, and troubled too, because with the introduction of brand new Wakandans, we will also be coming face to face with the mighty forces of Atlantis in the November 2022 release. But who are these new characters? What is their purpose in the story, and exactly how will they shape the future of the MCU? We'll answer all that and more in this video. This is every new character appearing in Black Panther Wakanda Forever Explored. If you haven't seen the trailer yet, this is your spoiler warning. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
We found out who's inside the Iron Man suit! It's this genius new student named Riri Williams!
Ironheart. Dominic Thorne will be stepping into her own version of the Ironheart Mark I in Black Panther Wakanda Forever as she makes her official MCU debut, and we couldn't be more excited. In the comics, Riri Williams is an exceptional scientist and inventor who is so capable at her craft that by the time she was 15, she had already reversed engineered Stark tech to recreate Iron Man's armor. A top student at MIT, Riri was the axis around which her university rotated, which was proven by the fact that when she left the institute, their research projects immediately began failing, to the point that they gave her a personal lab just to get her to come back. After participating in the Second Civil War and taking down the Hydra Captain America alongside her teenage companions from the Champions, Riri came into contact with Wakanda through her war with the Ten Rings. In the comics, Ironheart goes in search of Doctor Strange, looking for the location of the mystical wellspring of power in an attempt to stop the Ten Rings' usage of shadow monsters. Those who watched Thor: Love and Thunder are sitting up in their seats right now and paying closer attention, as they should, because we believe that this is how the Ironheart character will become involved with Wakanda in the MCU as well. Given the shots we see of the various US intelligence agencies in the trailer, presumably setting up a treasure hunt of some sort, we can surmise that the government is searching for something. That something could very well end up being the wellspring of power, and if that is the case, then the greatest country in the world is about to get a lot of unwelcome visitors, because in the comics, that wellspring is located in Wakanda. In fact, Riri teams up with Shuri and Okoye to take down the Ten Rings, which also includes her father somehow, but that's for a different video, and is awarded with a Circlet of Bast, Wakanda's version of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and free access to the country anytime she wants. The Wakanda Forever trailer gives us two very clear shots of Riri Williams, both of which reminds us of previous MCU stalwarts. The first is her carving out a heart-shaped opening on a sheet of metal that looks exactly like the Mark I armor from Iron Man 1. Looks like the MCU Ironheart's armor will be paying closer homage to her idol than her comic book counterpart, because in the comics, Ironheart's arc reactor is, well, over her heart. The second is a handshake she performs with Shuri, who walks into her lab in a scene that might as well be a step-by-step recreation of her interaction with her brother in the first Black Panther movie. Judging by their clothes, we're guessing that this scene takes place towards the end of the movie, after Shuri picks up after her brother's mantle. But we're getting too far ahead of ourselves now. Regardless of how Riri's story plays out, it's safe to assume that she will be an integral part of Wakanda Forever, and will most likely play the Shuri to Letitia Williams' T'Challa. And of course, we can't wait to see how her involvement in the Wakanda Atlantis War will help set up the Ironheart Disney Plus series coming out in 2023. Attuma. Alex Livanelli will step into the role of Attuma, and he already looks about as menacing as you'd expect him to be. A member of the Skarka tribe of Atlantis, from the clips we saw in the trailer, it appears that Attuma is a war general to Namor based on the way the MCU likes to usually structure its villainous teams, which is rather surprising because in the comics, Attuma is one of Namor's biggest enemies. See, the Skarka tribe, unlike the rest of the Atlanteans, were nomadic in nature and liked to move around quite a bit, never settling in one place for too long. This led to them being viewed as savages and barbarians in the advanced underwater civilization, and after Namor's forebearers managed to band together the rest of the Atlantean tribes under their rule, they banished the Skarka from ever stepping foot in their fabled city. And he oversaw several failed uprisings in an attempt to fulfill his own destiny. Any of this starting to sound familiar to you? Anyway, it was prophesied in the Skarka tribe that one day a boy possessing extraordinary strength, speed, and endurance would be born to them, even by Atlantean standards, and this boy was destined to rule over Atlantis, routing Namor's ancestors and establishing the Skarka as the royal house of Atlantis. And that boy was Attuma. He fought and lost to Namor on several occasions, with his first appearance seeing him trick the Fantastic Four into helping him take out their common enemy. But Marvel's first family were able to figure out that Attuma was the greater evil and ended up secretly helping Namor beat him instead. He is Namor's oldest rival and newest ally in the world of the comics and has admittedly taken over Atlantis a couple of times himself. But in the context of the MCU, Attuma's backstory closely mirrors that of M'Baku from the Jabari tribe, which is only fitting because in one of the few action shots of the trailer, we saw everyone's favorite Wakandan after Shuri leapt off a boat and go straight for Namor. It's possible that like T'Challa and M'Baku, Attuma and Namor were able to put aside their differences and come together for the greater good of Atlantis, and that is why they are working together in the movie. Either way, he's going to be a literal heavy hitter in the grand scheme of things, so keep an eye on him, and who knows, he might pull a Loki at the last minute and stab Namor in the back, which would add another layer of unpredictability to the story. Namora. If you happen to catch a glimpse or view of a blue-skinned woman with a drop-dead gorgeous headgear rising through the waters like a majestic beast, then you've been introduced to Namora. Originally called Aquaria Nautica Neptunia in the comics, Namora was a human mutant hybrid like her cousin. Her father was an Atlantean man and her mother was a surface woman. When she was young, her father brought her to the royal court, where she soon became fast friends with Prince Namor, after she inadvertently taught him a lesson in humility by saving his life when he underestimated her. Thereafter, Namor developed an unflinching respect for his companion, who came to be seen as his cousin and was even named Namora, though she wouldn't fully embrace that title till she lost her father to surface-dwelling treasure hunters. Filled with a sense of revenge, Aquaria fully embraced the title of Namora, avenging daughter in the Atlantean tongue, and joined her cousin by his side in his many wars. In the comics, things get rather awkward because it's revealed that Namora's deepest desire is to be with her cousin in a romantic capacity. While there is technically nothing taboo about it, because they share no blood ties, but even when they give it a shot, it's revealed that their relationship was actually engineered by the power brokers of Atlantis, so Namora never fully realizes her love for Namor, which is just as well because it doesn't look like this is the version of her character that we will get in the movie. Namora and Namor will likely be portrayed as brother and sister, sharing a dynamic very similar to T'Challa and Shuri's because Namor is meant to be a mirror image of T'Challa. But with Namora, we do get our first glimpses of, drumrolls please, Atlantean technology. In the scene where it looks like she turned up with Attuma to lay the smack down on Okoye and her Dora Milaje, we can clearly see the breathing devices that they use to operate on land. And you can also see that Namora uses weaponry similar to the Dora Milaje's, as her weapon of choice seems to be a spear. It will be interesting to see whether Namora makes it through the story and where she goes from here if she does. But now let's go from a kind of Dora Milaje to someone who used to be the real deal, and keyword here being used to. Anika. Michaela Coel's casting stirred up a hornet's nest when it was announced, with speculation running rampant as to who she was playing in the movie. Turns out she's playing by far one of the most interesting characters residing in Wakanda from the comics, There, Annika was the hand-picked combat instructor of the elite Dora Milaje, appointed by T'Challa himself. Annika was an exceptional warrior who trained most of the Dora Milaje were familiar with, like Okoye and Ayo, but she was also a fiercely independent and driven woman. In the comics, she ended up killing the chieftain of a village because of his gross mistreatment of women, which ended up getting her thrown in jail by Queen Ramonda, who could not excuse this extrajudicial killing. In the comics, Annika was in a relationship with Ayo, who tried to speak up for her with a queen mother, but it was to no avail. Annika ended up escaping her prison cell with the help of Ayo, who had stolen the Midnight Angel armors, and the pair set off on their own to realize a Wakanda that was good for all that lived in it, and not just the royal family. The rogue couple started a rebellion and were successful in capturing many Jabari lands before Shuri had to intervene on T'Challa's behalf and convince them to fulfill their higher duty to all of Wakanda. Wakanda Forever is already going to have a massive war playing out as its main storyline. And while adding a civil war on top of things would make the movie much more intriguing, it just isn't how Marvel does business these days. Based on the footage we saw of her, it's likely that at some point in the past, Annika was sent on a mission that ended up delusioning her with her entire life's mission. As a result, she defected to Atlantis and ended up helping teach them the fighting skills that the Dora Milaje possessed. Marvel is notorious for splicing in flashbacks and opening sequences for their trailers, so it wouldn't surprise us to find out that the scene we got where Annika was standing side by side with her fellow Wakandans was a flashback. What's way more telling is the close-up we get of Ayo, who looks like she has just seen a ghost in front of her eyes. Like a long-lost lover has returned, but she's here to take her head. We already saw that Annika was wearing a blue garb, which is completely different from the standard Dora Milaje uniforms. In fact, its design is rather reminiscent of the Midnight Angel armor from the comics. It's just missing that headgear. If Kevin Feige and company take this route of storytelling, then it will allow them to develop their characters while avoiding crowding the plot with too many elements. Either way, Annika is one you guys should definitely watch out for because she will be a key player in the events of the movie. And speaking of key players,
I am Namor, ruler of the kingdom of Atlantis. Your time in the sun is over.
Namor. Tenoch Huerta has been cast as the King of Atlantis, Namor, and if we're being completely honest with you, we're excited to see his Maya-influenced take on the Submariner, one of the oldest Marvel supervillains in existence. In the comics, Namor is the son of the human Leonard Mackenzie and the Atlantean royal princess Fen. Mackenzie was incidentally on the search for a lost stash of vibranium when he came across the woman who would become the mother of his child and the future King of Atlantis. Namor grew up at the royal court of Atlantis and has been taught since birth that his first duty was to his people. Everything else was secondary, including the surface people, which is why he has served as both protagonist and antagonist in several Marvel stories. In the comics, Atlantis and Wakanda fight several wars against each other, with the two advanced civilizations often vying for the top spot. And while that would seem to be the reason enough for Namor's inclusion to Wakanda Forever, it seems to us that his backstory goes deeper than that. As you might already be aware of, Namor's MCU origins are drastically different to his comic book counterparts. For starters, he isn't a disciple of Poseidon or Neptune. He is somehow a worshipper of the Mayan pantheon, as evidenced by the design on the murals he was studying in a short moment from the trailer. We also get several shots of Namor in traditional garb, which makes him look and feel like a badass warrior chief. But the main thing that we want to bring to your attention are three scenes from the trailer that practically parallel each other. The first is a scene of a young Namor watching a village burn helplessly. The second is a shot of Namor at the same beachfront, albeit much older, and the third is a shot of Shuri in the throne room with everything burning down around her. So far, the only information we have on Namor's plotline is that his background is heavily influenced by the Mesoamerican religions and that he will seek out the Wakandans to help him keep his own village safe. But as what we've seen already, things won't exactly play out that way. Our current working theory is that Namor's village was attacked by Wakandans when he was a child, back when the world's greatest country was more interested in conquest, and that the truce is actually a means for him to exact his revenge. There were also multiple references to a jaguar tribe when the movie was first going into production a couple of years ago, but every hint of that has already been removed from the marketing of the film, which also leads us to believe that this particular tribe didn't join up with the Wakandans and instead went to Atlantis and made their own kingdom, and ended up on the Wakandans' radar as a rogue faction, much like the Jabari in the first movie. Exactly how Namor's Atlantean heritage and connection will be paid off in the movie remains to be seen, but we can guarantee that Namor is going to wreck some stuff. Stuff in all caps, bold, and italics.
Of course they're running away, but didn't their boss just say they came here looking for a fight?
Atlanteans. Atlantis in the MCU is going to be different from what it is in the comics, to say the very least. While it is still possible for the Atlanteans to worship Poseidon in some form as they do in the comics, it looks highly unlikely. The MCU has clearly positioned the Atlanteans as a race inspired by Mayan culture, which begs the question, who is their patron god? Is it Chak, the god of rain and thunder? Because that's practically the only god with dominion over some form of water in the Mayan pantheon. Everyone else is focused on the sky and the woods and the dead. Whoever their patron god might be, it can't be denied that the MCU's Atlantis is definitely linked to the Mayan culture, because we see Nakia, who is one of Wakanda's best spies, stand at the shoreline of a beach with a Mayan-style pyramid in the backdraft, suggesting she's going to be spying on the Atlanteans in the movie. We suspect that this change was made to keep Namor and his Atlanteans different from the ones Arthur Curry leads in DCEU's Aquaman franchise, but that's about it. What isn't different about them is, well, everything else. The Atlanteans look and operate like their comic book counterparts. They have blue skin, they need special technology to operate on the surface, and they all share a spiritual connection to their residents. We see an Atlantean birthing ceremony and can observe that the birth takes place entirely underwater. We see a beautiful shot of Atlanteans riding whales to fight enemies at sea. We see Atlantean warriors take advantage of the tide and everything else the mighty ocean has to provide in their efforts to protect their home from the US government and the Wakandans. It's very likely that the MCU's Atlanteans are like their Aztecs. They might have been led here by someone like Druig led the Aztec survivors for literally a millennia, and ended up assimilating the Mayan culture into their own. It's also possible that they were offshoots of the Eternals or the Deviants, because in the comics, the Atlanteans were actually aliens from the planet Vodon, and no one knows how they got to Earth. It is speculated that they might have been brought here thanks to the Eternals' Deviant War, and after the introduction of the Eternals to the MCU, that does seem like a plausible origin story. But all this speculation will get us nowhere close to cracking the code. We're just going to have to wait and discover this ourselves. And finally, let's get to the biggest question mark from the entire trailer. The new Black Panther. It's rare that a trailer about a superhero film only gets one shot of the said hero, but given the circumstances surrounding Black Panther 2's production, we're surprised they even got one in there. After Chadwick Boseman's passing, Marvel announced that they would not recast his character, which was the most honorable thing they could have done for his legacy. But it also made us think, who is going to be the new Black Panther? There are two prime candidates in the eyes of the audience, so let's break down the least likely one. Fans believe that since the suit shown in the trailer had the golden claws of Killmonger's suit, Michael B. Jordan is retaining his role from the first film. Now, to be fair, there is some merit to his claim. Killmonger literally refuses to stay dead in the comics, using another ancient artifact called the Resurrection Altar. Killmonger manages to bring himself back to life over and over again as long as his minions don't screw up the ritual. And to be fair, we've already seen one godly avatar come back to life. Mark Spector was resurrected by Khonshu after he made it to the Field of Reeds, so it wouldn't be entirely impossible to get Killmonger out of the ancestral plane. After all, he does share a link with Bast being the last person to ingest the heart-shaped herb and all, but we think that would ruin the impact he made in the first film. Killmonger was the devil's advocate that T'Challa needed to encounter to open his eyes to the truth, that Wakanda's power was meant to be shared and not hoarded. By bringing him back, yes, you'll guarantee an insane audience reaction, but that's about it.
All that challenge shit is over with. I'm the king now. Get those planes in the air!
The more logical choice would be T'Challa's very own sister, Shuri. Shuri is the heir presumptive to the throne of Wakanda after T'Challa's death, and she has already donned the mantle of Black Panther in the comics. In fact, as the Black Panther, she even went to war with Namor once, which is probably the storyline they drew inspiration from for Wakanda Forever. But there is an interesting thing about her transformation. Shuri didn't get her powers immediately. In the comics, after going through the trials to become the Black Panther, she ingests the heart-shaped herb and communes with Bast, but her goddess rejects her because she knows that Shuri truly wants to become the Black Panther out of jealousy for her brother and not as duty to Wakanda. Shuri uses her ingenuity and the Black Panther armor to carry on her brother's legacy anyway, and eventually is granted the mantle officially after Bast sees her warrior's courage and decides that she is now worthy. Though Killmonger burned every heart-shaped herb in the Sacred Garden, it is possible that Shuri ate one when she was young out of a similar desire but ended up not gaining the powers her brother did. Now, after everything that has transpired, she will finally become worthy of the mantle and put on the armor that she preferred in the first movie in the first place. Either that, or she will use an artificial strain of the heart-shaped herb to augment herself as she does for her soldiers in the comics. Regardless, we're 98% sure that Shuri is going to be the new Black Panther, though it will be a long and painful journey for her to get there. Marvelous verdict. And that's our list. We've covered every new major character that we managed to spot from the Black Panther Wakanda Forever trailer, but we're sure we must have missed something. Do let us know what that may be in the comments below. Ryan Coogler and his team seem determined to honor Chadwick Boseman's memory by putting out an artistic masterpiece staged in the MCU, and the trailer certainly gives off that vibe. Wakanda Forever has the potential to be the most heart-wrenching installment of the entire cinematic universe, and we personally think that November is way too far. We can only be patient for so long, but we'll try our best to hang in there. If you enjoyed this video, click on the like button and comment below about which other movie reviews you would want to watch. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.